Bitcoin.
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 We had you on because you're the CEO of a software company who decided to invest your cash into Bitcoin.
This is Michael Saylor, the CEO and founder of MicroStrategy, who in the last year has become one of the most recognizable names in the world of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's now a $1 trillion digital monetary network. It's the fastest growing thing in our lifetimes. It's the most powerful technology of our lifetimes. It's going to change the lives of 8 billion consumers, of 100 million businesses, of every investor on the planet. It's going to impact the valuation of $500 trillion of assets.
In August of 2020, Michael Saylor made history by converting $500 million of excess cash reserves into Bitcoin. That investment has grown over 600% in the last 6 months, and he's added even more Bitcoin since. And now he's making his case and starting a chain reaction for every other major corporation on Earth to follow suit.
Jack Dorsey's company Square buying $50 million worth of Bitcoin.
PayPal cashing in on the crypto craze, a payment company announcing a new feature that will allow users to buy, sell, and hold cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin.
Tesla has put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's the world's first engineered safe haven asset, and it's running on the world's first digital monetary network. I mean, everybody in the world, every institutional investor is looking for a safe haven, and they're all losing faith in gold, and they're losing faith in sovereign debt as a safe haven. So Bitcoin is sitting at the right place at the right time. It's very appealing to anybody that wants to preserve shareholder wealth.
But who exactly is Michael Saylor? An MIT double major in aeronautics and engineering, a former Air Force lieutenant, a 32-year tenured CEO of a business intelligence software company, a man that lost over $6 billion in one day at the height of the .com bubble, maybe surprisingly so, a notorious party animal. What people don't know about the Michael Saylor of today is that he has been prophetic on nearly every major technological paradigm shift in the last 20 years. Before Facebook and Google were even invented and were collecting every piece of data about your individual identity and behavior, Michael Saylor was building the same sort of software to capture that data way back in the early 90s. Before every person had smartphones in their pocket, Michael Saylor authored a book about how they would render obsolete almost everything in our physical and analog world, from print media to classroom educations to doctor's visits, all to be replaced with software in the palm of your hand. And while Bitcoin has already been around for 12 years at this point, Michael Saylor thinks that we're only in the first inning, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. In this video, we're going to explore who exactly Michael Saylor is, and get into the mind of an engineer and an entrepreneur who sees his multi-billion-dollar investment into Bitcoin not as a speculative bet, but a stake in the evolution of money as we know it. If you've watched podcasts or video of Michael Saylor in the past, or just have the faintest interest in Bitcoin, you're not gonna wanna miss this. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel down below, Kinetic Finance. We're making videos like this every single week, diving into all sorts of topics into cryptocurrency and finance, and give this video a like as it helps it get it out to more people as well.
I have no intention of running for president.
The year was 1987. Reagan meets Gorbachev. Black Monday ravages the stock market, and Talking Alf is the hottest Christmas gift of the year.
Alf, alien life form new from Coleco.
It's also the year that Michael Saylor began his career. After graduating MIT on a full Air Force scholarship, Saylor initially looked to become a fighter pilot, but after a suspected benign heart murmur, he had to pursue a different path, eventually becoming a consultant for the chemical giant DuPont. One of his first tasks was to build simulation software for DuPont to help them figure out how to spend their multi-billion-dollar budget from their titanium dioxide business.
And the problem was I was 22, I knew the math, but I didn't understand the politics. Someone hands you $1 billion, you want to spend it. And I kept creating these computer programs and predicted that they were going to lose the money if they spent it. So my computer would say, don't spend it, give it back to the corporation, and it wasn't really a good result. Yeah. So they kept sending me back to the drawing board to build more computer models, put graphical interfaces on it, plug it into a mainframe, network it.
After 18 months of designing business software for DuPont, Michael Saylor thought that his skills were best suited elsewhere, thus starting him on a path of founding his own business, with DuPont as his first customer.
So I went to DuPont, I said, I quit. I'm starting a company. I will build your global multi-user networked war game if you want me to. As a contractor, please give me money.
Yeah.
And I waited, and they gave me a $250,000 contract. I said, I need $100,000 in cash up front. And they said, well, we never give 24-year-old kids $100,000 in cash because you might waste it or skip off to Brazil or something. And I used this one negotiating strategy. It only works once in your life, but it worked for me. I looked at them and I said, you have to give me the $100,000 because I have no money. So like holding your breath until they give in. And they looked at that and they had to agree I did have no money. And so they gave me the $100,000 and then they gave me free office space and computer equipment and incubated the business. Then they gave me 4 more contracts. And MicroStrategy was born.
So what exactly is MicroStrategy? It's a company that makes business intelligence software, which is essentially taking as many data points from a situation as possible on behalf of, let's just say, a company, and then getting those data points to create strategies to solve complex problems. Software that could tell you how to fix or avoid congested traffic, for example. Or if you were a store, help you decide which products were the best selling and how often you should be restocking them. And nowadays, we know the impact of business intelligence by all sorts of names. This ability to collect and interpret data to make everything cheaper, faster, and more precise. It's the way that Google knows what you're looking for before you can even type the second word into the search bar, or how you find yourself endlessly going through videos on YouTube or TikTok, or how you find yourself on Instagram when you should be writing more of your Michael Saylor video, and then you stumble upon an Uber Eats ad in the next 20 seconds, and then 30 minutes later, you find yourself eating pizza with absolutely no regrets.
Nice.
But before we had phones and social networks dominating our each and every move, data itself was a lot simpler. And MicroStrategy existed to help take businesses in the physical world dealing with physical and analog things and help them transition to the emerging digital world of the internet.
What is internet anyway? What do you write to it like mail?
Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No, she can't say anything in 10 seconds or less.
During the surge of the .com boom, MicroStrategy had become one of the most valuable companies on Wall Street. They were running Superbowl ads and getting contracts with massive corporations like McDonald's, Whole Foods, Adidas, and even Visa. And Michael Saylor was living it up, renting out football fields, throwing gigantic parties for celebrities, even chartering a cruise for over 1,600 of MicroStrategy's employees all around the Caribbean. And for a short period of time, he was actually the richest man in Washington, D.C. And after hitting a record high of $3,300 per share in March of 2000, MicroStrategy was sent a letter from the Securities and Exchange Commission accusing them of reporting false revenue numbers through fraudulent accounting. In one day, Michael Saylor's net worth dropped by $6 billion. That's 9 zeros. In 5 days, MicroStrategy stock had dropped 80%. And months later, after they had settled with the SEC, their stock was down about 98% from the peak. For most companies during the .com bubble, this was how the bitter end was met. Billions of dollars of shareholder value wiped out and the complete inability to achieve profitability. But for the companies that did survive, of course, they ended up becoming the biggest corporations on planet Earth. Now, while MicroStrategy never became a name brand, it persisted. They built new products, got new enterprise clients, and grew slowly and steadily over the next 20 years. And that's because to Michael Saylor, a new wave of intelligence was just on the horizon, something that we take for granted today.
The exciting new thing is the dematerialization of half the economy. So it used to be 10 years ago, I was concerned about how I move items back and forth, but the items were things like DVDs, CDs, a video camera, a tape recorder, a magazine. They used to be products. Now they're icons on a screen. And an education used to be a service provided by people. Education is now dematerializing to become something of Wikipedia or Khan Academy. Imagine if I've got a device, say a tablet like this, and I'm a student in Pakistan or Turkey or Argentina. Now I get a free education in English from an American company. I also get all my textbooks for free. It means that I don't have to buy anything from a local provider. It means that the education I'm getting isn't subject to the local nation.
And it means you can educate yourself as fast as you want to.
I was 14 before I was able to study a foreign language. I had a choice of Spanish or French. 4 semesters, I had to sit in a class with 30 other people and go at their rate. And I came from, the richest nation on earth.
Now, imagine if you're 4 years old, you have a choice of 100 languages, and you don't have to ask your parents' permission, the mayor's permission, the local religious leader's permission, or the president of the country's permission. Now you're untethering and unleashing the power of humanity to an extent we've never seen in the history of the world.
This idea of mobile intelligence and a thirst for knowledge is so critical to understanding who Michael Saylor really is. He even set up a website and a foundation called Saylor.org where you can take over 200 college-level courses for free.
You can see a world where we want to trade more. We want to tap into labor pools everywhere in China and India, wherever the labor might be. We want to create the talent, and then we want to repurpose the talent. I have services I could sell here in the US or in Europe, but I don't have the human capital necessary to create it. And maybe the human capital doesn't exist anywhere, and we need to create it. The world doesn't need 100,000 average algebra teachers. The world needs one really, really good algebra teacher then to be automated and manifested in software, which then delivers an algebra education to the next 10 billion people.
To understand Saylor's thesis here, it's really important to understand what the term human capital means. It's this notion that everyone has this economic and commoditized value tied to their knowledge, skills, and competencies. For example, if you have a degree in engineering, you undoubtedly have an understanding of physics, how electricity works, and probably some really good critical thinking skills along the way. If you ever played a game like Civilization or Age of Empires, well then you know what I'm talking about. More bodies, more brains, and you win the war game. And so the more of this human capital that a society or a corporation has, the faster and more able they will be to get to new innovations that advance the human race as a whole. But for the last few hundred and thousand years, the way that we've harnessed and developed human capital is through these really archaic analog systems. Degrees, courses, and classrooms can cost thousands or millions of dollars just to pump out one master's graduate or PhD candidate, and it takes an unbelievable amount of resources to do so. From campus development, housing, a plethora of teachers, safe spaces, anywhere between 4 to 8 years for one of these graduates to actually utilize their skills in the workforce. Saylor's thesis here is that in order for us to maintain this exponential growth in innovation and problem solving, it can't cost this much. It can't take this many years and be limited to this many people. There aren't enough seats in classrooms, not enough scholarships or grants making their way to every individual in every society around the world who are ready and willing to step up and take on these challenges. With the advent of the mobile wave, all of that changes. Education becomes software, a piece of software that you carry with you for 16 hours a day. With the internet, information is infinite. A YouTube playlist can teach you everything you want to know about cooking a Chateaubriand, how to build a house, how to learn quantum mechanics. It unlocks the next step for humanity to evolve exponentially. It runs permissionless, borderless, 24/7, available to all. But there's one big problem lingering that hasn't been solved by engineering or science. And this problem is so big and so ubiquitous that it ruptures everything that it touches. Personal freedom, democracy, the climate. It's all about money.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it.
Right, Bitcoin is monetary energy. Human beings, they rose from the apes. They rose through the Paleolithic times for one reason. We learned how to manage and master and channel energy. It starts with fire. If there's no fire, there's no humanity, right? We genetically wouldn't be what we are without fire. If I'm dropped 1 million years ago, I'd go find a river, dam the river, create a pond, let a bunch of fish swim into the pond, and I would do my fishing by reaching down in the pond, grab a fish, cook it. That's hydraulic energy. And at some point, it becomes channeling gravitational energy. So we can go on from there, right? After the chemical and the gravitational and the kinetic energy, there's other forms of energy. There's no human race. There's no civilization. There's no nothing without channeling energy. All of that energy can become monetary energy. Monetary energy, money, is the apex energy. If I have $1 million, I can convert it into kinetic energy or electrical energy or potential energy. If I have kinetic energy or electrical energy, I can convert it back into monetary energy. Now, we put monetary energy on a crypto network. And why did we do that? Because we wanted the crypto network to transcend any company and any country. We wanted it to we wanted it to be a long duration energy network. And I've made the point before that if you put $100 million into any bank in any city in the world, there's a 95% chance that you lost it when the regime changed and when the government failed. And there's a 100% chance that you lost 90% of your purchasing power because gold miners keep producing more gold. And so that's an energy network that's bleeding power. And whether or not you could say it's bleeding 2% of power a year or 4% of power a year. But energy networks bleed power.
When you start to think of Bitcoin and money like it's energy, it completely changes the way that you think about wealth and storing value. Think of your phone battery and how it holds a charge, but how every year it holds less and less of a charge until it gets so terrible and dies so quickly that you're kind of forced to go out and get a new one. If this was an ideal battery, it'd be able to hold just as much of a charge this year as it would 5 years from now, but it's not. And if money was ideal, this $20 bill would be able to get me just as much value today as 10 years from now. But it doesn't, because of a thing that we know to be inflation. At least in the case of the battery, it's just following the laws of physics. We don't go out debating the subjectivity of it's a good or bad battery because the science is right underneath our nose. And every year we do go out and try to make a better battery. With money, we're also losing power, but instead of it being set by the laws of thermodynamics or physics in a predictable and honest way, it's set by the whim of governments who have a notorious record of devaluing this money by 2 to 30% per year.
You know, I think the formative event for a lot of people that are coming into Bitcoin right now is March 2020. I think when I saw that Wall Street had an immediate recovery and Main Street did not, I think that caused me to lose a bit of my, well, what would be the word? It's like, it shakes your faith. We have the entire world focused on inflation, and inflation equals CPI, and CPI is us tracking a market basket of consumer goods. And in both the US and the EU, that market basket does not include the highly volatile energy and food. Everybody nods, oh yeah, we cannot include energy and food because they're highly volatile. That sounds like a Jedi mind trick to me. These are not the droids you're looking for. Tell me one person on the planet that doesn't want energy and food. Okay, but let's put that aside because it's a classic example of misdirection. Because the massive elephant in the room here is the market basket ought to include assets. It ought to include real estate. It ought to include education. It ought to include scarce art. It ought to include the number one asset that the market basket should include is retirement, an annuity. That is what everybody on earth strives for. They call it social security. Security, the ability to live my life and not starve to death and not run out of stuff. So we saw hyperinflation in annuities when COVID hit, but no one called it hyperinflation, and every politician and the heads of the central bank stood up and lamented that we have no inflation.
We endlessly consume and search for the next property or commodity in fear that this store of our work, of our value, is constantly losing every single year. This money is a liability. And in the words of Michael Saylor, Bitcoin is the engineered solution to turning money back into an asset, something that you actually want to own in of itself. Bitcoin has no central corruptible issuer, the supply is finite, and it runs 24/7 with no permission from anyone. If you've read the Bitcoin white paper and studied it through and through, you can understand every aspect to how it works and how it's designed. There's something egalitarian about Bitcoin. It's for rich and poor alike, something that everyone across the world can have in the palm of their hand. Bitcoin is an extension of this mobile wave of intelligent design, of energy, of the type of things that Michael Saylor has been studying his whole life. But it's not like he found Bitcoin in 2009 or 2011, and it took him until 2020 to come out and say it was the greatest thing that he'd ever seen. In fact, in 2013, he even tweeted out that Bitcoin's days were numbered. What makes Saylor an interesting person to study is that he exemplifies the journey that everyone that has come to Bitcoin inevitably goes through.
You know, I guess first we start ignorant. Like first I was just ignorant. Then I was skeptical. Then my mind was opened by circumstance. And then I became interested. That led to being enamored. That led to more study and eventually resulted in conviction.
In July of 2020, MicroStrategy put $250 million of their capital reserves into Bitcoin. Every news outlet and anchor thought he was crazy.
Are you a software company or are you a Bitcoin fund?
Do you risk losing the identity that has been so good to you as you move more and more of your balance sheet into Bitcoin?
For a while, the price of Bitcoin didn't even seem to care. In September of 2020, he put in another $200 million. And then the dominoes began to fall.
Jack Dorsey's company Square buying $50 million worth of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin Club is getting bigger. Mass Mutual is the latest member to join, buying $100 million for its general investment fund.
Tesla has put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin.
In a span of 6 months, Michael Saylor became the single biggest factor of changing the narrative from why would I buy Bitcoin to why haven't I bought Bitcoin? Day in and day out, Michael Saylor appears on podcasts, mainstream media, hosting events for thousands of CEOs, as well as creating educational material for his nonprofit just to teach others about Bitcoin. He may have become a Bitcoin rock star overnight, but his journey and discovery of Bitcoin has been in the works for his whole life. There's only one lesson to take away from this video here, from Michael Saylor's story. It should be that the rewards for opening up your mind to new concepts are limitless. That there should be no age, no history, no excuse to not build your knowledge in the things that interest you and help humanity. In some ways, it's a daunting task. It feels like the price of complacency has never been so high because we have all of this knowledge at our fingertips. But it also means that each of us has the ability to influence, learn, and change things like no other point in history.
And yes, I know that the future is uncertain, and maybe God will come down with his frickin' quantum computer ray gun and point it at the head of every miner and wreck them all. Maybe that will happen, and maybe a meteorite will hit the earth, and maybe every government in the world will simultaneously declare Bitcoin is death sentence. Maybe that will happen. I get it. But on the other hand, I also got to get up and walk through the street, and you could fall down accidentally while you cross the street, and that might kill you too. And so that doesn't keep me cowering in bed every morning. So you got to take a risk. So the issue is not, is there a risk? The issue is it less risky to do this than do nothing? And then the next question is, am I willing to take the risk myself that I would encourage other people to take? And so when I talk to the hodlers and they're individuals and they're putting their life savings into this, I think they should know that, yeah, I am. I'm in this too. And when I actually suggest that, yeah, I think it's a good thing to hold for 100 years, I'm not speaking on behalf of other outside investors in my company like I'm going to cajole them into doing it with their money. No, I'm talking about it on my own personal account. This is what I believe.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. It took hundreds of hours of research, and if you liked what you heard from Michael Saylor, I've included some links to dozens of interviews and podcasts and clips that I think are just fantastic ways to learn more about his perspective on life, Bitcoin, and everything else. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, a like down below. Comment, as it really helps the algorithm and gets this video seen by more people, even if it's like a great video or terrible video. Whatever you want to write, go for it. I'd really appreciate it down below. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel as we put out a video just like this one every single week. So take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.